Hi, I'm Jacqueline Veet, Subject Advisor for Art, Design and Media at Pearson. This video has been created to support centers in selecting work for GCSE Art and Design for Component 1, the Personal Portfolio. This presentation is a guide to selecting work. It should be noted that this is not a compulsory requirement of the specification. However, prudent selection of a candidate's work rather than submitting everything created since the beginning of the coursework period can be a positive way of identifying the strengths within visual journeys and to support teacher assessment decisions. Teachers know the students best and should be encouraged to manage the selection of work with the student carefully, acknowledging the time and effort they have invested producing work throughout the course. Where candidates have produced a range of responses across multiple projects, selection may not be appropriate. The work must show progression of their ideas, evidence all assessment objectives, and cover areas of study as required by the specification. When you are preparing for an assessment of your candidate's work, you should ensure that you are using the assessment tools provided by Pearson Edexcel to support you. There are 3 key assessment tools for marking GCSE art and design work that work in harmony together. To fine-tune your mark, the taxonomy, the assessment grid, and exemplar material are useful. We are now going to look at a fine art component, Personal Portfolio Component 1 submission. This sample includes 2 A2 sketch pads and a smaller square one, as well as multiple outcomes of varying sizes and mediums. The center's approach in their fine art course is to use one overarching theme of environment across the 2-year course to enable candidates to develop ideas and concepts in depth, reflecting on a sustained line of inquiry as well as exploring a range of technical processes. We are going to look at the whole submission of work before beginning the process of selection. The course begins in Year 10 and the candidate records their initial drawn observations of the world around them, as well as documenting a journey to school with an assemblage of pencil studies. It is likely that the work at the beginning of the course does not fully reflect the strengths of the submission, but you can see that the candidate is engaged in the creative process. Dry point etchings are created from a photograph of art materials within the art room environment, which lead onto further prints relating to form and color. The candidate develops their ideas in preparation for a small sculpture project. It is interesting that the candidate has developed their prints by adding color and by creating a further etching. A school art trip to Margate inspires the candidate to make a series of confident color-focused watercolor studies and larger A2 response inspired by the installation work of British Ghanaian artist Larry Achiampong. The candidate sets out their intentions for their sculpture, inspired by the ceramic work of contemporary artist Edmond Duval. They document the processes they have trialed through photography. The candidate sees some of Andy Warhol's repeat screen prints in a gallery and is inspired to create a personal etching response based on the Barbican building on London, which they photographically record. The candidate is interested in Warhol's concept that more you look at the same exact thing, the better and emptier you feel, reflected in the repeat prints. Here we have a series of A2 studies where the candidate responds to their investigations undertaken in the early stages of the course. The work here is secure, thoughtful, and engaged, and also shows elements of risk-taking. At this very early stage of the course, the candidate is establishing their visual language and enjoying the process of exploring and experimenting with a range of materials and processes. The candidate uses photography as a tool for recording confident observations. Large A2 drawings are made, a reference to earlier work, as well as focused investigations into the work of contemporary artists. The candidate begins to use their refined photographs and figurative paintings on scraps of cardboard to assemble perceptive collages that reflect the isolation of the urban landscape. Personal annotations relating to the experiences of COVID are made. Small refined oil-painted imagery using the shape and surface of discarded cardboard pieces using a limited palette of black, red, and white are created, reflecting further convincing evidence of focused work with an element of risk-taking, characteristics of performance level 5, confident and assured. Further exciting and large-scale development studies reflect an advanced understanding of the formal elements of art and design. The top 2 and bottom left are oil paintings, and the bottom are the candidate's photographs. These assemblages become more complex and relevant annotation documents the candidate's visual ideas. A plan is made for an outcome generated by these comprehensive investigations. The candidate is clear in their planning that the final outcome, on the right, is created by overlapping the 2 panels to create a larger A2 response. This becomes the final outcome of Component 1, Personal Portfolio. And here is a larger image of the final outcome. It is important to start by looking at the body of work holistically and use the taxonomy statement that best fits the characteristics of the work as a whole. The Center have decided that the best fit performance level for the work as a whole places the submission within performance level 5, confident and assured. This performance level suggests that the work has fully met all the characteristics of performance level 4, competent and consistent. At this stage, it is possible to consider if a selection of work would more convincingly evidence the candidate's ability to respond with a sustained line of inquiry and meet assessment objectives at this level to more firmly support the Center's assessment decisions. The earlier work in the smaller sketchpad is important to the candidate in that it records how the project begins, and we can see tentative glimmers of how the candidate's visual language will evolve throughout the course. The visual evidence of performance level 5, however, is less secure. You can see that the Center is embedding a focus of understanding and responding to the work of a range of contemporary fine artists, but later in the course the candidate begins to select and explore comprehensively their own relevant artists, and with general personal inquiry that is focused and perceptive. The earlier work could be omitted from the personal portfolio for assessment purposes, as it does not reflect the characteristics of performance level 5. There is sufficient evidence in the latter work of this submission that would support the assessment judgments of the Center. Although worthy and relevant to the candidate's creative development, these studies do not add value to the personal portfolio. Assessment decisions can be made on the remaining work, which exemplify the characteristics of performance level 5 and help the teacher assessors to fine-tune a final mark out of 72, using the assessment grid, focusing on the strengths of the submission. Now we will look at this candidate's final body of Component 1 work selected for assessment. Most of the evidence of AO1, AO2, and AO3 is within the candidate's sketchpad, reflecting a comprehensive approach to developing ideas through investigations, refining ideas, and recording observations. The candidate uses photography to confidently record their observations of deserted and desolate local environments, AO3, and makes links with the work of relevant artists. Paintings on scraps of cardboard are created to reflect the isolation of the urban landscapes, AO2 and AO3. They sensitively comment, the dark feelings and lack of human life creates a sinister, isolated atmosphere, reminding me of COVID and the overwhelming, constant feelings of loneliness, AO3. These refined oil studies are developed from the candidate's own photographs of their local environment and become more narrative than literal visual statements. Further exciting development studies reflect an advanced understanding of the formal elements of art and design, AO2 and AO3. Think about how these outcomes are more advanced, perceptive, refined, and risk-taking than their earlier work. These assemblages become more complex and relevant annotation documents of the candidate's visual ideas, AO2 and AO3. A plan is made for an outcome generated by these comprehensive investigations, AO4. Separate sections are painted in oils on torn cardboard, reflecting a refined application of the medium, AO3 and AO4. The final outcome draws together the strands of ideas, skills, and sources that the candidate has explored, reflecting a sustained line of inquiry and convincing evidence across the assessment objectives. The Center can now use this selected portfolio of evidence to fine-tune their final mark, looking specifically at each of the assessment objectives, identifying strengths and weaknesses. A mark of 56 out of 72 is awarded by the teacher assessor, using the selected portfolio of evidence. This is an accurate mark agreed by the senior assessment team. It can be daunting to select work out of the original candidate's portfolio of work if you are used to submitting everything the candidate has created. However, when looking at the work you have selected for assessment, consider if the work reflects your original holistic judgment using the taxonomy. Are you able to find enough convincing evidence for each mark breakdown across the assessment objectives? To finish, a reminder of the key points from this presentation. Selection of work is not compulsory, but is encouraged. Select a body of work that has a sustained line of inquiry and has convincing evidence across the assessment objectives. Use the assessment tools provided to help make accurate assessment decisions and to standardize internally. For further clarification, advice, and guidance, please feel free to contact us using the support details on this slide. In addition, there are links to view our new bite-sized videos focused on how to evidence and assess each of the assessment objectives, as well as sign up for future training and events. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to supporting you and your center.